So I know you used to work with kids and still do kind of work with kids, and so I was wondering, like, what's the best way that they learn? Like,
Okay.
how could I possibly say something to them that would get them to kind of focus on the meaning of the coloring pages?
Um, well, one thing that with teaching kids, one thing that I learned is, and I learned this from some other people that professionals that teach kids, and they said that like basically what shows that have been around for a long time, like Sesame Street, the longest running kids show, it's not around anymore, but it was the longest running one, was Captain Kangaroo. And what they said that they did, the reason they were so successful and able to stand the test of time in teaching kids, is that they learned, instead of trying to teach the kid, what you do is they would teach characters. And so, like, if you ever watch like a episode of Sesame Street, it's not just like 30 minutes of them looking at the camera going, okay, kids, so today we're learning da 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 da. Da, 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 and then teach the kids, because the kids they said what would wind up happening is the kids kind of zone out because they just start feeling like they're sitting in school, and so just kind of be like, so what they would do is they would teach, like, say on Sesame Street, they would teach Elmo or Big Bird or something. The characters would be learning the lesson, and the kids get to observe the character learning, and they would also kind of invite the kids to help teach the character. So, like, say if one of the characters, let's say like Elmo, was like afraid of the dark or something, instead of like teaching the episode, so essentially the lesson is they're wanting to teach the kid that you don't have to be afraid of the dark. So instead of being like, okay, kids, you don't have to be afraid of the dark because da da da, what they would do is like Elmo would be like afraid of the dark, and the kid, so that would be the story. And then what they would do is they would teach Elmo not to be afraid of dark and how not to be afraid of dark. What does he do? What to do when you're not when you're feeling afraid. And they would invite the kids. They'd be like, you kids, this. Does Elmo need to be afraid of the dark? And the kids watch the show, be like, no. And they'd be like, that's right. What does Elmo need to do? And because they would have already told Elmo, when you're afraid of the dark, just stand up and say, I'm not afraid. And say, to get Elmo to repeat it. I'm not afraid. Say it again, Elmo. I'm not afraid. And then they would say, all right, kids, what does Elmo need to say when he's scared? I'm not afraid, And so that way the kids don't feel like they're being taught, but they are. Because then what happens is the next time a kid feels afraid, they think about that, they remember that, and then they do it, So the kids feel like they're just being entertained, but the truth is they're being taught. So if you can work it out, whatever it is you want to get across, you work it out in a way to where the kid just feels like they're being entertained. But the truth is they're learning something, because no matter what a kid does, watches, whether it's educational or not, they're learning something, and later on in life when you have kids of your own, you'll notice this, because if you ask your kid, what did you learn at school today? Nothing, but then if, your kid is watching like some show on like a cartoon on Disney XD or something like that, and whether you ask them or not, they're going to tell you all about what happened in the episode, even though it wasn't an educational thing. And they're learning things that are coming from the show. So if you can take that technique and use it to your advantage, which you can totally do with something like this, with what you're doing. But that's the way you can teach them. And then as far as getting them to get, like, really it to stick with them, the key is keeping it simple. As far as, instead of trying to teach them like a bunch of different things, focus on one thing and just kind of hammer that one thing in. Does that make sense?
And I feel like that's kind of what I tried to do with some of the coloring
Yeah.
pages. I tried to just take one component from like a book, but then some of the other ones I tried to take multiple. And I feel like the one with the one component will help them learn more.
Yeah.
But I feel like I also tried to do multiple just so that some kids who like to color would have more to do other than coloring one big character. So I feel like the ones with their brains more developed should take the more complex ones, and the ones that are like, I don't like to color, should take like the not more complex ones, just so that it can be like, they'll still have fun and they'll still learn, just depending on how much their brain is like willing to take in from the coloring pages.
Yeah, totally. And like, like what you've done already is like really, really cool. And like if you wanted to eventually like take it further, what you could do is you could kind of pick out like say, like maybe if you wanted to make it like a bigger coloring book with like several, like a lot of pages or something, you could do like say pick out like 5 stories from each book, and then like just like 5 key stories, which Genesis is like, I mean, chock full of like a ton of really cool stories, especially for like elementary age kids, preschool age and all that. I mean, it's the stories we learned when we were all little, about like Adam and Eve, the flood, all that kind of stuff, Abraham, Joseph, all those different things. It's really cool. And I mean, they're great for like coloring books, especially like Joseph in the Code of Many Colors and all that kind of stuff. But you could you could have like a coloring page, 1 page for each one of those stories, and it'd be kind of cool, because it's something that's like real simple, but like the kids, like that'd be a cool way just to teach the kids the simple aspect of like knowing what story was in which book. It's like, which book is the story of Abraham in? And they would very easily learn it because of your coloring book. They would know that if you have like the 5 Genesis coloring pages, and then and so they would know, oh, that one's in the Genesis one, But like you said, like we were saying, like just if you keep it real simple, the kids are able to retain it a lot better than trying to teach them. Like when I was teaching kids, instead of like say for like our Bible verse, like we had like a verse for our series or something we were teaching, instead of having a different verse each Sunday or each week, because there's no way they would retain all that. They would learn it and then forget it the next week, So we would just have like 1 verse for the entire month. And so by the end of the year, they've learned 12 verses, but they've retained them for the most part. So, sorry, go ahead.
So going off of that, do you feel like I should explain the coloring pages to the little kids, or let the coloring pages speak for themselves?
Like, how do you mean, explain?
Like, for the kids who I give the Genesis coloring page to, be like, oh, this was the flood, this was Adam and Eve, this is what they did, or should I just hand them the coloring page and be like, color?
Well, I mean, okay, so like with these, you have like your Genesis coloring page. It's 1 page, and it says on there Adam and Eve, and then it says Noah's Ark. All right, and so it's like that one thing. So I mean, like with doing it that way, to where it's just like 1 page for each book. Let's see, you could. I mean, like it depends. I guess it depends on like if you it depends on how much time you have with them. One thing you could do is like if you wanted to actually have a thing where you teach them, is you could tell the story, like pick one story maybe, and like either one of them, either Adam and Eve or Noah's Ark, and just kind of tell the story. Tell it in a really animated way, like a narrative type of way, instead of like a lesson type of way. Like when I taught the story of Abraham and Isaac, where Abraham's taking Isaac up and, with the whole, like he's going to sacrifice Isaac, and then God provides the ram. The way I told it was not just plainly the way it was written. I told the story, but I told it in a very narrative way. Like I would, basically the way it would be done if you were to, if someone did a cartoon showing it. It would be really boring cartoon if it was just like the narrator was basically just sitting there reading the story off of Genesis. Instead, I added like what type of thoughts or feelings they might be experiencing, because the kids really kind of get sucked in more like that. And so like with Noah's Ark, you could kind of use, like tell the story, and you can, you want to keep it short. Like they say 1 minute for each year of the kid's life. So if you're teaching You know, 5-year-olds, you really want to keep it no more than 5 minutes, because they just, after that, their brains just can't handle what their butt can endure, is what they say. You know, if they can't sit still for 5 minutes, then they can't sit there and listen for 5 minutes. They're 10 years old, you can do about 10 minutes tops. 15-year-olds, they say, you know, you want to keep your lesson to no more than 15 minutes. You know, but just kind of like make it just really animated, and just and by that I mean just like really, like how when people are reading like a Dr. Seuss book or something to the kids, you know, they don't just sit there and say, and just read it, but they'll say, and then da 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 da, you know, they kind of make it expressive. But like if you could do something like that, I think that'd be really cool. Like maybe tell the story, take like, depending on the age of the kids, like preschool, so we're talking like 5 years old, you know, take like 4 or 5 minutes and tell the story in like a really cool way, in a way that they would think was super cool. And then, so you just hit like highlights, and then hand out the coloring sheets where they get to color it. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like they're getting to then visualize it, you know, like now that they've heard it, as they're coloring it, they're thinking, they can be like thinking about the things that you said. So I think that'd be a cool way to do it, you know, because then when they get picked up from school or whatever, you know, they're in the car with their parents and they're like, oh, what y'all did? And they're like, you know, this girl Isabel came in and she told us this cool story, da 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 da, and then, you know, Noah got the animals, and everybody was like, you're crazy, and he was like you'll see, or something, you know. Yeah. And you know, and make the kids laugh, you know, make them have fun. It should be fun, you know. And then you got colored. Look what I colored, you know, mm-hmm. And kind of think of it that way, you know. But I think that'd be a neat way to do that. So.
I feel like that would be good too, because then they could hear all the stories, and then when I give them the coloring sheet, they could just focus on one of them. Yeah. So yeah,
I wouldn't try to tell both Adam and Eve and the Noah story at the same time, like at the same coloring sheet, because the kids, honestly, they're not gonna retain it. What's gonna wind up happening is their brain's gonna put it together, mm-hmm. And so then if they try to retell it to their parents, you know, what did you learn today? Oh, I learned that like God told Adam to not eat this fruit, but he ate it, and so God flooded the earth and killed everybody. And but then Noah got a boat. And this was like, what? You know, and so it will just kind of get mixed up. So I would just focus on like one. Yeah. You know.
And as we discussed earlier, I will be handing out the pages as like whoever likes to color more and whoever likes to color less, depending on the complexity. Do you think that's the right way to do it, or do you think that I should be like, who wants to color Genesis, and then like have them raise their hand?
I would do it like that, because I mean you could do it like that, or I mean you could just kind of, and honestly, like what would you consider like the more complex ones?
The more complex ones are definitely Exodus, and then Leviticus is probably not that complex.
Yeah.
Because there's just a person.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And I feel like these three are all in the middle, Genesis, mm-hmm. Numbers, and Deuteronomy, because they fill up the whole page, but there's not really that many aspects to color.
Yeah.
Like very detailed, as where Exodus, there's so many details.
Well, I will say this, like if you just say like, who wants to color Leviticus, they're not going to know what you're talking about. You know, like, who's Leviticus? Yeah. Why do I get to color them? You know, but if you maybe like just kind of base it on, are all the kids gonna be pretty much the same age?
Yeah, 5 and 6.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe like you could just be like, who loves to color?
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, at that age, you'll probably get majority of the kids raise their hand, mm-hmm. You know, and so then you could kind of like hand out, and what you could do, kids love competition, and they love to feel special, even if the reward is nothing. I mean, yeah. That's, you know, so what you could do is be like how many kids are there in the room? Do you know?
13.
13. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I hate math. Calculator. So like that's like 2.6 that you divide by 5, 6, 2.5. So you could do like, you could hand out like maybe have like 3 copies of each one or something. Like if each kid's only going to get like one, then you could have like 3 copies of each. And so what you could do is you could be like, who absolutely is the color? I'm talking about like coloring is your favorite. And that's what I mean. Like the way I'm doing that, that's what I mean by being animated. Like versus just being like, who likes to color, because that just feels kind of like teachers, but if you make it be like, you're just like a big kid, then, kids, they love that. They just feel like you're like the coolest grown up ever, because you're like me, so usually who loves, I'm talking about like coloring is your favorite thing to do. And so you'll be like, me. And so you'll be like, all right, I'm picking out 3 people who this is your absolute favorite thing. And then so you could hand out like select like 3 kids that they get the Exodus one, All right. And then you could hand out like, kind of do it that way. And then like the ones who weren't really like, like me or whatever, that weren't really like really trying to get it, then you could maybe do the ones that require less coloring, because they might not be just, some kids it's like they're not gonna, no matter what you do, they're not gonna be super receptive, and you can still try, but you have to at the same time like just kind of accept that that not every kid's gonna get as excited about it, but there are going to be those that do, and those, you can kind of like, you work it, so that might be a way to do it. I wouldn't necessarily say like, who wants the Genesis one, because they don't really, they're just going to be, all they want is just to get picked, so like it doesn't matter which one. You could have, whether you said who wants the Genesis one or who wants the Leviticus one, you would have gotten the same kids going, ooh, pick me, because they just want attention, and which is a good thing. That's what kids want. And if you can just make a kid like feel special, give them then like it's almost like a puppy. Like if you just give it a little attention, it'll love you forever. And that's the way kids are. They want to feel seen, and like, you get them. And so, yeah. I feel like if I'm excited about it, they'll be excited about it too. That is 100% the truth. And that's anything. That's something like, if you can learn that now, it doesn't matter who you're talking to, they say in public speaking, you are the most blank in the room. When you're a public speaker, whatever it is that you want your audience to feel, you have to kind of like exemplify, like you have to be that times 10, whatever you want them to feel. If you're telling a story about something, you want your audience to be like, feel sad about it, then you need to be the saddest person about this. Or like if you tell them the story and it's like about injustice and something's done, you've got to be the one that's the most upset in the room. Because if you want them to be excited about something, you're kind of like, yeah, this is really cool, then they're not going to be any more excited about than that. They're going to be like, walk out and be like, oh yeah, that was cool. But if you're like, oh gosh, this is like the coolest thing ever, then people are going to be like, wow, this is really awesome. But no one's going to ever like exceed where you are. So that's the thing. And that's public speaking in general, so yeah, if you're really excited about it and you act really excited about it, then kids will get really excited about it. So yeah, you're right. And I feel like I've been emailing with the teacher of the kids, who's like also my empathy mentor. That's why we have to call it in English. It's basically just the person who helps to get the project done. And I feel like emailing with her and like telling her what I'm going to do for the kids and how excited I am is getting the teacher excited too. Yeah, totally. So the teacher's been talking to the kids about it, like, oh my gosh, there's this girl, she's going to come in, you guys are going to get to color with her and all this stuff. Yeah, see, and that's really cool. So the kids are already kind of like getting excited about it, and when you show up, like, you're not just like, it's not just like, who's this? It's kind of like, oh, here's this girl I've been telling you about, Isabel. And so you can walk in and just be like, hey guys! And like one trick I always learned is just like, with kids, like, and I mean, I love teaching kids. It's one of the favorite things I've ever done. Like, it's so much, it's a lot of fun. If you learn how to work it, it's a blast. But I mean, you just go up and I would just be like, what's up, everybody? Hey, how you doing? And, sometimes it just depends on like how, whatever's happened before, like if the kids have been prepped or not, like if the teacher's real excited like that, then the kids will already be. But if not, then the kids will just kind of be like, just make a bunch of noise. And you'll be like, what was that? Oh my God. Okay, you can do better than that. Okay, you know what? Here, let's try something. Let's hear if the guys can be more excited or if the girls can. Like I told you, kids love competition. It doesn't matter, and whoever gets this is going to get 1,000 points at the end of the day. What 1,000 points do? Nothing. But to them, we want 1,000 points. They can't spend on anything, but they want 1,000 points. I mean, we used to do that. We'd be like, be doing trivia or something, and boys versus girls. And all right, final question. Whoever gets this one is worth 1,000,000 points. Oh my! The kids would be freaking out. I mean, they'd be pulling their hair out. But it's like, it doesn't, like 1,000,000 points, so who cares? The kids love it. So, but yeah, like if you can go in there and just have fun with it and pull the excitement out of the kids and just be like, oh my gosh, you can do better than that. Are you having a good day? Yeah, something like that. And just do stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. If you kind of just go and just be over the top like that, the reaction you get is really cool. Yeah.
So that's all the questions I have for you, but do you have any questions for me about anything?
How'd you come up with the idea?
So I have a little brother who's 3 years old. Well, 4 now. And
fun.
I always talk to him. I was like, so like, what do you know about the Bible and all this stuff? Just because like I have a really strong faith, and so I wanted like my siblings to have a really strong faith too. And he's like, what's the Bible? And so I was like, okay, like something needs to change. And so this is the preschool that he goes to. And so I was like, I have to like try and teach.
Oh, so will he be in the room?
He won't be in the room because he's not the oldest class.
Okay.
He's like
actually, because you still be 5 and 6-year-olds.
Yes, it's 5 and 6-year-olds because I feel like they can retain more information than the younger ones.
Yeah. I always taught, like the kids I was teaching, I taught elementary age. So it was, our kids were 1st through 5th grade were the age. So, I mean, which is kind of a huge range because you got these 1st graders. So, at the beginning of each school year when we would kind of like transition the oldest kids out and the youngest kids in, like you got these little kids that were kind of like walking in the room, like, because they're coming from like the little classes, and they were just like, oh my gosh. And the way we did it, like I was teaching, it was a children's church, but it was like I didn't do children's church the way most people do. every service, like my goal, and with my team, I had an awesome team. Like I told them, I was like, the most important thing, other than after the kids being safe, I was like, our number one goal is not that the kids learn. Our number one goal is that the kids have fun. Because if your number one goal is the kids learn, but the kids aren't having any fun, they're not going to learn anything. Yeah. They're just going to be bored and they're going to zone out. And you'll have like maybe the couple of kids that learn that are just the kids that I love to learn, Yeah. But that's not most kids, And so if you can make it to where the kids are having fun and they're excited, then you can teach them whatever you want to teach them, And the other thing is just keep it super simple. So like say you're doing the story about Noah. When you tell the story, instead of like trying to teach the kids, going back to like what I was telling you first thing, instead of teaching the kids, teach the characters and the kids will learn. Instead of being like, so kids, here's what you can learn from this, because then it's just like, oh great, she's teaching me. But instead, talk about what Noah could learn from this, and the kids will remember that, and so, but Noah was, like you could talk about, like say, like, okay, and what you want is you want to pick like, what is the one lesson that you want the kids to learn from the story?
I feel like there's a different lesson with every story. I feel like Genesis is more like always trust God and like what he has to tell you, just because that goes with Adam and Eve and Noah. Yeah. And then Exodus is more like you can always lean on God
Yeah.
with all your issues, and He'll like pull through, and just stuff like that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So with Noah, so talking about like, trusting God, so you could talk about like how Noah, and you want to pull things that like, the kids could relate to. That's the thing, So like, what a kid would relate to is like, what is everybody going to think of me? It's like, I'm okay, God told me to do this, but like, everybody's going to think I'm really weird, if I do this, and because everybody knows what that's like. We all deal with that, and you can imagine this had to be like what Noah was dealing with. There was that concern. It doesn't say that, but just out of his human instinct, those thoughts went through his head. And am I weird is this really God, but I'm trusting God, and so like what you could do is kind of like, instead of teaching the kids, so kids, trust God, you can kind of talk about Noah learning to trust God. Noah's really worried, like, what is everybody going to think of me? They're going to think I'm weird if I do this, but, Noah learned that, he knew that God, that God, I don't know, let's see, if I had more time to prepare for this, then I would know, but like, you could talk about like how, like that Noah knew that he could trust God because God, God loved Noah, and that, do you want me to leave?
I'm sorry, hi.
Hey.
You're going to be late for basketball.
Okay.
Sorry,
We gotta go.
it's 10 till.
Yeah. So you can stop recording. But basically like that. Yeah, I would just focus on like what the one lesson is in that, and just talk about like what Noah was learning,
Yes.
So I think it's a great idea. It's going to be really awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, totally.